Welcome to episode 185 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Lost Guy. It is May 4, 1976, Molineux, Wolverhampton Wanderers against Liverpool. And in West London, at the BBC, Queen's Park Rangers are waiting for history to make up its mind. Because QPR have already finished their season. They're sitting on top of the First Division, 1 point ahead of Liverpool. 42 matches played, nothing left to do, nothing left to control. Liverpool still have 1 match to play, away to Wolves. And for most of the night, the impossible is happening. Steve Kindon has put Wolves 1-0 up. Liverpool are behind. The clock is moving. QPR, as things stand, are champions of England. Not nearly champions, not just a good story, but champions. Then, with a quarter of an hour left, Liverpool do what great teams do before everyone else has fully realized they're great. Kevin Keegan scores. Toshack scores. And Ray Kennedy scores. Wolves 1, Liverpool 3. QPR's dream dies in the last 15 minutes of the league season, and Liverpool are champions by 1 point. And Bob Paisley, the reluctant successor to Bill Shankly, has his first trophy as Liverpool manager. It will not be his last. That is today's story. The closest QPR ever came to the title, and the night Paisley's Liverpool stopped being the team after Shankly and started becoming one of the great dynasties in English football. But how did we get here? Start with QPR, because this is not a fluke story. 9 years earlier, in 1967, as we discussed back in episode 124, Queen's Park Rangers had produced one of Wembley's great shocks. A third division club, 2-0 down to West Bromwich in the first one-match League Cup final at Wembley, came back to win 3-2. Roger Morgan, Rodney Marsh, Mark Lazarus. The League Cup grew up that day, and QPR grew with it. They won the third division that same season. Then they surged upward again. The club that had spent so much of its history fighting for relevance now had momentum, ambition, and a taste for the national stage. By 1973, QPR were back in the first division. And then came Dave Sexton. Dave Sexton is one of the most important figures in this story because he gives QPR shape. The easy version is to talk about Stan Bowles, and we will, because Bowles is irresistible. But this was not just a maverick side held together by vibes and genius. It was a properly coached team, intelligent, fluid, brave and technical. At their best, they played with a freedom that looked almost continental by English standards. Phil Parkes was a giant in goal. Dave Clement and Ian Gillard gave them energy from fullback. Frank McLintock brought authority and experience. David Webb gave them edge. Jerry Francis was the captain, and more than that, the pulse of the side. Elegant, mobile, powerful, one of the outstanding midfielders in England. Don Masson gave them craft. Dave Thomas gave them width and delivery. Don Givens gave them goals. And then there was Stan Bowles. Stan Bowles was one of those footballers who makes nostalgia dangerous, because people who saw him begin to sound like they're describing a different sport. Loose socks, low center of gravity, gambling shop charisma. The ball tied to his instep. A player who looked as if he had wandered into the match from somewhere more interesting and might wander out again just as easily. But Sexton made the talent function, and in 75-76, it all came together. Now Liverpool. 2 summers earlier, in 1974, Bill Shankly had stunned the club by retiring. Shankly had made Liverpool modern. He had rebuilt the club from the second division into champions, European competitors, FA Cup winners, a civic religion. Replacing him was not succession. It was inheritance, under pressure. Bob Paisley did not stride into the job like a conqueror. He had to be persuaded. He was already in his mid-50s, a boot-room man, a coach, a thinker, someone who understood the club from the inside, but did not appear to crave the throne. His first season, 74-75, brought no trophy. Liverpool finished second. So 75-76 mattered. Was this still Shankly's machine, but slowly fading? Or was Paisley building something of his own? Look at the team at Molineux, and you can already see the answer forming. Ray Clements in goal, Tommy Smith, Phil Neal, Phil Thompson, and Emlyn Hughes. Ray Kennedy now transformed from forward into midfield force. Kevin Keegan, the restless detonator. Jimmy Case, Steve Highway, John Toshack, and Ian Callahan. And on the bench, David Fairclough, the super sub, who had already begun to specialize in late interventions. This was Liverpool between eras, but not between identities. Shankly's emotional charge was still there. Paisley's precision was being added. And across the 75-76 season, that blend had to chase down the most romantic title challenger in the country. Appropriately, the season began with QPR against Liverpool, Loftus Road, August 1975. QPR won 2-0. Gary Francis scored a goal so good it became the goal of the season kind of memory. A move from deep, passing, running, timing, and Francis finishing past Ray Clemens. Don Givens added the second. It was not just a win, it was a message. QPR were not playing for survival. They were playing like a team that thought it belonged near the top. By December, when the two sides met again at Anfield, QPR were first and Liverpool second. This time, Liverpool won 2-0. The title race tightened, and after the turn of the year, QPR went on a run that still looks extraordinary. 11 wins and 1 draw from 12 matches. They were not hanging around waiting for Liverpool to fail. They were taking the league by the collar. Then came the decisive April. On April 17, the race swung. QPR went to Carrow Road and lost 3-2 to Norwich City. Liverpool beat Stoke City 5-3 at Anfield. Liverpool moved top. On Easter Monday, April 19, QPR beat Arsenal 2-1 at Loftus Road, while Liverpool went to Main Road and won 3-0 against Manchester City. Then, on April 24, QPR beat Leeds United 2-0. That was their final match. Then Bowles scored. The crowd invaded the pitch. The director's box celebrated. QPR had done everything they could. Their league season was over. They were top, 1 point ahead of Liverpool. And there they stayed for 10 days. 10 days is a strange kind of football purgatory, long enough to imagine the trophy, long enough to replay every missed chance in your head, long enough to convince yourself that Wolves away under the lights with Wolves fighting for survival might just be the kind of match that breaks Liverpool. Because Wolves had their own desperation. They were in the relegation zone. They needed to beat Liverpool and hope results elsewhere gave them a route out. This was not a neutral stage for Liverpool's coronation. It was a knife edge for both ends of the table. The match had originally been scheduled for April 24, but was rearranged. Liverpool had European commitments and Wales call-ups affecting John Toshack and Joey Jones. So now the whole English season had been stretched to one final Tuesday night, May 4, 1976. At Molineux, the program called it the greatest first division drama, and that is exactly what it was. The game started perfectly for Wolves and perfectly for QPR. When less than a quarter gone, Steve Kindon scored. Wolves 1, Liverpool 0. At halftime, it stayed that way. Liverpool were not champions. QPR were. And then the second half came and became a test of nerve. Liverpool pressed. Wolves held. The clock kept moving. Every minute made the impossible look more ordinary. But there was another thread. News came through from Bramall Lane, where Birmingham City were playing Sheffield United. Wolves needed help there too. Birmingham's result meant that even a Wolves win might not be enough. That mattered psychologically. Wolves were still leading Liverpool, still defending, still fighting, but the oxygen was beginning to thin. Liverpool, meanwhile, only needed a point. Under the old system, the first separator was after points was goal average, not modern goal difference. A draw would be enough. But while they were behind, QPR's title remained alive. And then, in the 76th minute, the break came. John Toshack set up Kevin Keegan, and Keegan scored 1-1. That was a title turning. Not fully sealed yet, but it was the moment QPR's dream slipped from their hands. At 1-1, Liverpool were going back above them. Then in the 85th minute, Ray Kennedy supplied John Toshack. Q won Liverpool. And in the 89th minute, Keegan turned provider for Ray Kennedy. 3-1. From panic to procession in 13 minutes. The final whistle confirmed two verdicts at once. Liverpool were champions of England and Wolves were relegated. And QPR, the best QPR side there's ever been, had finished second by 1 point. So what did this mean? For QPR, it was the high watermark, not just because they finished second, but because of how close they came. They were unbeaten at Loftus Road in the league. They won more league matches than Liverpool. They played football that people remembered as liberated, expressive, and slightly dangerous. They gave West London a team that felt glamorous without being imperial. And yet, they won nothing. That is the cruelty of it. If Liverpool lose at Wolves, QPR champions, Dave Sexton is not just the clever coach of a beautiful nearly team. Stan Bowles is not just a cult genius. Gary Francis is not just one of the best midfielders of his generation. They are league champions. Their names sit in a different room. Instead, they became the 10-day champions, the team that had the title in its hands while waiting for somebody else to drop it. And they never got that close again. The following season, QPR fell away. By 1979, they were relegated. There were later flashes. The 1982 FA Cup final, European nights, the strange pain of beating Partizan Belgrade 6-2 at Highbury in '84, and still going out after losing 4-0 in the return. Very QPR that. Brilliant, fragile, almost there. But 1976 was the summit. For Liverpool, the meaning is the opposite. This was not a summit. It was a launch. Paisley's first trophy arrived at Molineux. 15 days later, Liverpool won the UEFA Cup, beating Club Brugge 4-3 on aggregate after another comeback at Anfield and another Keegan intervention in Belgium. League and Europe in May 1976. That was the click. The following season, Liverpool won the league again and then the European Cup in Rome. In '78, they won the European Cup again. By the time Paisley stepped down in 1983, he had won 6 league titles, 3 European Cups, a UEFA Cup, and 3 League Cups. No manager before him had won 3 European Cups. Liverpool under Paisley became not merely England's best side, but Europe's most efficient winning machine. And the dynasty continued beyond him. Fagan, Dalglish, more titles, more European nights, Ian Rush, Alan Hansen, Graham Souness, Kenny Dalglish the player becoming Kenny Dalglish the manager. For roughly 15 years, Liverpool set the standard in English football in a way later matched only by Ferguson's Manchester United, and perhaps, in a different era and different register, Guardiola's Manchester City. But every dynasty has hinge moments. For Liverpool, May 4, 1976 is one of them. It is the moment Paisley's Liverpool proves it can win when the season has shrunk to a single nerve. It is the moment the post-Shankly question is answered. It is the moment they step from continuity into empire. And perhaps that is why QPR's pain feels so sharp, because they were not beaten by an ordinary champion. They were beaten by the beginning of an age. Before we go, 3 things to take away from May 4, 1976. First, QPR were not a fairy tale fluke. From the 1967 League Cup miracle to Dave Sexton's sophisticated 75-76 side, this was a real football ascent, and a team that came within 1 point and one Liverpool comeback of being champions of England. Second, the title race turned on old football drama. 2 points for a win, goal average, fixture congestion, rearranged matches, title and relegation decided together under floodlights on the final night. Third, for QPR, this was the summit. For Liverpool, it was the beginning. Paisley's first trophy led almost immediately to the UEFA Cup, then the European Cup, then one of the greatest managerial reigns the game has seen. On this day in 1976, Liverpool trailed Wolves 1-0 with 15 minutes left. Queen's Park Rangers were champions as things stood, and then Keegan, Toshack and Ray Kennedy scored the goals that broke QPR hearts, relegated Wolves, and launched Bob Paisley's Liverpool dynasty. That is all for episode 185 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Lost Guy. Tomorrow, go to May 5, 1918, into the first final of the Coupe de France, played while the Great War was still raging. See you tomorrow.